Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 97 of the Watch Rolling Podcast. The Watch Rolling Podcast is a veteran-owned podcast that focuses on horology while sharing valuable resources with the watch enthusiast community. My name is Jason. I'm your host. If you're new to the pod, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Well, you saw the thumbnail. This is going to be episode 97, which is the disease of more. And what is the disease of more? Well, it's something I think I've been dealing with lately that I think a lot of watch enthusiasts deal with, but I don't hear it spoken about very much, at least not in certain circles. And I think it's important for all of us to understand because it's made me reevaluate some stuff. And I think it would be good to share, especially from my point of view, specifically for me. So, what is the disease of more? The disease of more was coined by NBA coach Pat Riley. If you're not into sports, I'm sorry, but it's where it came from. And it's about winning teams that struggle the next season because players want more stuff after they're successful. So they want more playing time or money or recognition. And he was specifically talking about the 1980 to 81 Lakers. And his quote was, "Success is often the first step toward disaster," right? That's in his 1988 book called Showtime. How does that relate to watch collecting? Well, the thrill of getting a watch often leads to wanting more or the next best thing instead of appreciating what's already owned. And I think that's something I've been struggling with. It's just been something where it's like, I got into this thing, it's been like 6 years now, 5 or 6 years. And like most people, I started out with some micro brands and stuff like that. But as I learned more, I wanted more. And I watch a lot of videos and read a lot. And it seems like there's always like there's this next better thing or this next best thing. And it's led me to the point to where I don't really appreciate what I already have. And what I have is some cool stuff. And it's made me think about it. And this all came about with me thinking I needed a Rolex Explorer 2. And I've done some real soul searching on this. And we'll get to that in a minute. But I would tell you, beware the social media aspect of it. Because I think for me, that's what really was driving it. It's just like the quick hit, boom, quick hit. You're seeing stuff that everyone's got that. It's so cool. And I've held them. I've held Explorer 2s. But when I sat down and really thought about it, I realized this is what I was dealing with was the disease of more. So I'd like to share it with you and hopefully hope you see that if that's what it is. So from an enthusiast to a collector, most of us go through these phases, I would think. Some of us went through them long, long time ago, and for me, it hasn't been too long. But I went through the enthusiast phase where, watches were exciting for me. They were exciting for the design, the history, and the craftsmanship. There wasn't any pressure. I was just learning, just passion. The whole thing is cool. And for me, it was definitely budget based because there were certain things I wasn't even looking at early on because I was like most newer enthusiasts, like there's no way I'm spending that much for a watch. Not fully understanding, the engineering, the design elements, the craftsmanship and all the stuff that goes behind building those watches or making those watches or even understanding the tiers of watches. But initially the whole thing was just super cool for me. I was like super stoked about it. I was like, oh man, it's great. I'm learning so much stuff. That phase went into a collector phase, what I call the quote unquote collector phase, where my focus shifted to a curation. So what do I want specifically? What do I like after I know what I like? And then, so I started chasing specific brands, specific models within specific brands or quote unquote grails. I think it's a positive phase, but I feel like it's more positive if there's more intentional education involved in that phase. So you're continuing to learn as you're curating. You're continuing to expand your knowledge about what's going on inside the watch or what's going on outside the watch or how does this piece relate inside the history of a certain line, because sometimes maybe something's the first iteration of a movement inside a line or a first iteration of a specific engineering feat for a watch inside a line. I think of when I had my 2500 reference Planet Ocean in the dual escapement from George Daniels in there. It's I thought that was pretty positive because I was learning so much cool stuff. And then that one went into what I call the challenge phase, which is an actual challenge because the pursuit of better can often overshadow my enjoyment. And I think it quickly went that way for me. I stopped being in the collector phase. I stopped being in a curation enthusiast phases or even where they blended in. I just wanted better. And what does better even mean? I mean, the definition from the Oxford Dictionary is like of a more excellent or effective type or quality. But me looking at the Explorer 2, I'm looking at it and, I've held plenty of them. I held the 5-digit one. I've held the newer iterations. And it's like, are they really any better than some of the stuff I know I want deep, deep down inside? And the easy comparison for me was the Rolex Explorer 2, the 16570. and I was looking for specific stuff. I was looking for drilled lug holes with the newer movement, the 3186. And at the dollar range that I was going to work in, I would have been having to sacrifice like box and papers probably and just get the watch only, as opposed to this other watch I'm really interested in. I've always loved and I've handled it numerous times, is the SPGA 463, which is a Grand Seiko titanium diver, gold GS, gold Grand Seiko, spring drive movement, beautiful watch. Really, really beefy, but at the same time, super light from the titanium, Grand Seiko's proprietary treatment of the titanium, all that stuff. But they are apples to oranges because technically the Rolex Explorer 2 is a spelunking watch. So that's just cave diving, essentially. Not cave diving, literal diving, but going into caves and exploring them. And I played that game a long time ago on Atari when I was a kid, Spelunker or Nintendo, whatever it was. It was a fun game. But the Grand Seiko is a dive watch. But so they're not really one and the same, but we're talking about very nicely made watches, et cetera, et cetera. And I started to ask myself this question, like if I go after this Rolex Explorer 2, am I really getting a better watch than this SPGA 463? Is it better by definition? And I sat and thought about it really hard for a couple days. And I'm like, I don't think it's better, especially at the price point I can get the SPGA 463 for. And I was like, you know what? I don't need the Explorer 2 right now. I just don't, because my heart has always sung for that 463. For those of you that know, I have a Grand Seiko SPGX 335. It's a 9F6 quartz movement. I love that watch. It was my first luxury watch. So my first luxury watch was not a Rolex or anything else, a Patek, Omega, you name it. It was a Grand Seiko. And I've always loved Seiko. I've professed my love for the brand since I've been a watch enthusiast, because they just provide you so much, from like $100 all the way up to $10,000, like with Creedor, if you want to, more expensive. You can get a little bit of everything at different price points with Seiko. And do they have their problems? Yeah, like there's some misalignment issues some people talk about. I've never personally seen that. I've owned a ton of Seikos. I've never had a misaligned bezel. I think that when you mathematically pump out the numbers of just number of watches that they pump out, there's going to be mistakes, and it happens. I'm not saying that it's an excuse for them. I'm just saying it happens. But mathematically, you're going to have more chance for a mistake. But I can understand that'd be frustrating if you got a timepiece, and because it's not a small amount of money either way you want to count it. And I can understand where it would be frustrating. I'd probably be frustrated too, but I wouldn't like let it shortchange me wholeheartedly on the brand. And then Rolex, I've handled plenty of Rolexes at this point. Thankfully, all through people who are either fellow watch enthusiasts or just like in stores and stuff. And I'm impressed. I like them. But at the end of the day, the Seiko for me is my style. That is, I love wearing them. Like when I have them on, like there's just something. Let's do the wrist check. I'm wearing my gold turtle on a gold strap code Jubilee style bracelet, SRPC 44. I mean, come on, gold plated, but not. It's a little ridiculous, but I love it. And it's the brand is just something I really, really enjoy wearing. And so how does this watch collecting disease of more start to affect me? Well, it was the cycle of wanting more. That the excitement of a new watch, it faded quickly. And that's not the watch's fault. That's not anything else's fault. That's my fault. It's my fault for not stopping and being present in the moment when I got the watch. It was just getting it, throwing it on wrist, wearing it for a little while, and then like passing it on like, okay, it's not a big deal. Instead of saying, what is it? Actually, it sounds hilarious to be present in the moment with an inanimate object, but to be present in the moment with my watches when I'm wearing them, because it will allow me to continue to enjoy them instead of pining for something I don't even have. It will allow me to mitigate the hunt for something new for the next one, right? Because if I get the next watch, then all I'm going to do is the same thing. If I continue the same cycle, I'm going to get another watch. It's going to make me happy for 25 minutes. And then I'm going to pine for the next watch that I don't even have. Too often I didn't appreciate the new piece. And I think a lot of that, I'll take it 51% me, 49% social influence. Online communities and social media, they can fuel the idea that there's always a better or more worthy piece. I would just offer that you listen carefully to who says what. I know plenty of online enthusiasts who are totally happy with what they have. I also think, though, that access to other watches helps that. I think that if you are a member of a watch enthusiast group, so like a Red Bar, like I am, Red Bar Virginia Beach, shout out Red Bar HQ. But if you're a part of that Red Bar or a local place or just a group of friends who are really into watches, if you get to experience other friends or other people's timepieces, I feel like that satiates that desire to go get a new watch sometimes. I think it's the same thing with straps. Like people talk about getting new straps or new shoes, quote unquote, for your watch. It makes it feel like you have a new watch. And I think that's a valid thing. I think it's a totally valid point. And I think some watches are better than others at that. I think that some watches take straps better than others. I think, if you got a 20 millimeter watch or 22 millimeter watch, you're in the sweet spot for like strap availability. So you can actually do that. I think some of these watches where it's like 19, 16, 18, 21 millimeter lug width, and you're going to have a hard time. But I do think that's something that helps you do it and helps you kind of just experience new watches. But just listen carefully to who says what, because some people are like always pushing the next thing. And, no harm, no foul. They can do what they want, but it can be unduly influencing, quote unquote, to someone who's newer in the watch space. And then balancing the hobby. For me, need to recognize that more, quote unquote, is taken away from the actual enjoyment I need enjoyment from this hobby. I need to be able to sit there and look at my watches that I'm wearing right now, like this thing, like my SRPC 44. It's so obnoxious, but I love it. And it's gold plated. It ain't real gold. I love the turtle. I've always loved the turtle. I loved how comfortable the turtle is. I've owned a couple of turtles, but I've never had a turtle that really fulfilled a certain niche. I tried a patty turtle once, but I'm not a patty diver. I'm a certified desk diver. And I've been looking for a gold watch because those of you know I have this gold Longapo bracelet that I've been trying to find something for. I need to add some metal to it. I tried it with this, but this lug width is 22 millimeters. That thing's like 17.5. So I got to work with someone to get some metal added to it. So I could probably wear it that way. But just a little piece of naval history for me on a fun watch. The turtles had great history, and it's just a big watch that wears so comfortably due to the cushion case. I just love it. But I need to recognize that the more is taken away from this. So if I sit and stop and think about my turtle and what it does, then it actually makes me happy, and I don't feel the need to go look for something else. So again, cycle of wanting more, be careful with social influence, and just balance the hobby. That's what I'm going to do for me. If it sounds like it could work for you, maybe it'll work for you. And there's curation versus consumption. So curation, mindful collecting. I think it's choosing pieces that truly reflect personal taste rather than trends. So, and it's a tug. I'm telling you, it's a tug of war. Maybe if it's not for you, hats off to you. I'm happy for you. But for me, it is. You hear about brands, etc., like Rolex. We all know they're marketing geniuses essentially. And then there's other brands you don't hear that much about, right? Functions. Are there certain functions that you like? Are there certain functions that you don't like? Like those of you that know me know, like if every watch was a no date watch, it'd be the greatest watch on the planet. Shout out Sam, casual watch. Sam loves dates and he wants dates on his watches. We couldn't be more polar opposites about that. If, like I said it again, every watch was a no date to be perfect. And then think about some other stuff. Are there colors that you enjoy? I know people that really enjoy colors, like specific colors, blues. I know people that enjoy tons of colors. I know people that don't like any colors. I kind of fall somewhere in the middle, but I do have like a real soft spot for like very mono grays and blacks and stuff like that. That's just me, but that's not everybody else. But just be mindful about what it is that you want to curate and make sure it really aligns up to your taste. Now, there are some people who like to curate names, but it's kind of like if you watched Harry Potter and Slughorn, who just like essentially collects cool, to him, quote unquote, people to come to these dinners. And it's a curation of people, I guess, which sounds really bad now that I'm saying it, but it's what it is. And so if curating brands is something, that's on you too. Some people curate different types of watches. They want a dive watch, they want a dress watch, they want a chronograph. But if that's your jam and that's what really speaks to you, that is mindful collecting and mindful curation of your collection. And I think that's something totally different than just doing it for namesake. Again, I don't want to yuck anyone's yum, but it can lead to a path of never quite being fulfilled. Because if we're honest, if you collected all the names, you would have a huge collection. And I think for me, mathematically, it would be hard to enjoy those watches based off of having so many watches. Like I have like a 7-watch collection. And sometimes I'm like, man, I really should be wearing that one. I love it. But my rotation, for whatever reason, I can't wear it that day or something. So just something to think about. You can also take lessons from collectors. Many experienced collectors downsize. They realize that fewer, more meaningful watches bring more joy than excess. So I've said this a million times. I've heard that from tons of more experienced enthusiasts. And also use these fellow collectors / enthusiasts for data extrapolation. Like I'm not even being funny about that. They are resource banks, knowledge banks, and you can go talk to them and they'll tell you like, I did this, I did that. Oh man, I wish I had done this. Oh man, I wish I had done that. I've had experience with this. I have this now. I've learned more. The only channel I probably ever learned more is the Watchbox 1916 reviews. And I've said that a million times, like not sponsored, the greatest 5 to 7 minute videos in the history of the planet. Like if you want to learn about watches, it's like a library. It's like the Library of Congress for watches. Go check out the channel on YouTube. It's fantastic. But other than that, it's been fellow enthusiasts because I get to hear real things. If I run across someone with the same size wrist as me and they're like, oh yeah, try this on. It feels kind of funny on mine. And I'm like, oh, it does feel kind of funny, or it doesn't work quite right. Or, oh, what do you think about this? Oh, this finish over time does this, or this does that. And it's just tons of free information you can get. And it allows you to interact with your fellow watch enthusiasts, and you get to have conversations, real conversations, and real, what I call just solid information from people who have had real practical experience with these watches. To me, it's the way to go. So mindful collecting, make sure you're paying attention to what you really enjoy for your collection, and then work with your fellow enthusiasts or collectors and listen to them and share information. Because I do think that you'll have a more enjoyable experience as a watch enthusiast, because if your collection speaks to you when you talk to other enthusiasts, it's going to sing to them. They're going to see themselves in you, not necessarily through what you collect, but more by how you feel about what you collect. And you might actually open their eyes to something they haven't even considered. It's happened to me a ton of times, and I've talked about that before. So to wrap this all up, the disease of more applies to watch collecting, right? More isn't always better. That's how we're talking about it here. I could say that could be anything. I think it could be cars. Cars would be crazy. I mean, imagine the size of your garage. I mean, I have 7 watches. If I had 7 cars, I mean, it's insane. But the disease of more as applies to collecting. Just be careful. I would never want anyone's enthusiasm to get diminished because they're not quite meeting quote unquote goals that, let's be honest, they're only goals if you make them goals. But if they're constantly chasing the dragon, quote unquote, that's always put out there for us, because the more the content we consume, the more we see, it can be a lot, and it could be like, well, you're not quite there. And if that's the case, you'll never, ever be there, which is, really sad. And I think you don't deserve that as a watch enthusiast. Ask yourself, are you collecting for passion or just chasing more? Reflect on your habits. I had to do that. This Rolex thing really came to a head with me. And it made me think, should I be thinking about my hobby like this? Is it that serious? I don't get paid for this stuff. I just share it with you, the audience, because I know we all have similar interests. I shouldn't be thinking that hard. I shouldn't be feeling like I'm kind of just settling for this Rolex because I feel like I should have a Rolex somewhere in my collection. And to be a real watch enthusiast, I should experience Rolex on a personal level, which couldn't be the furthest thing from the truth. And, and thankfully, all of my close watch circle, which is pretty big, no one's ever said that to me. It's something I've internalized from not being happy with what I've had. So I would just ask, if that's the same thing you're going through, I'm here for you. We can talk, but it's something I've had to work on, and I've had to reflect on my habits. So I just want to close by saying a great collection isn't about the quantity. It's not about the names on the dials. It's about meaning. What do those pieces mean to you? What do you love about those pieces? What gets you jazzed, like still to this day, just jazzed about them? I can tell you, for me, for Seiko, it's like, I really like the streamlined process, just as an example. I like the fact that there's a wide swath, case shapes, hand styles, dial styles. The movements are pretty solid. Like, I know you're going to get a pretty robust movement. I know. I always tell people they're like Toyota Camrys with really nice paint jobs. And then I can also move up to like Lexus if I want to. And I think that that's appealing to me as a watch enthusiast. So it just makes that brand a little special to me, and it's about meaning. And so when I talk to people about the Seikos I have in the Grand Seiko, it's love, right? And I love to wear them, and I feel like you should be able to love what you wear too. And I think if you do, it'll come across better, and it'll make your whole hobby just happier for yourself. Not that you're not happy, you might be perfectly happy, but I was just going through it, and I felt like it was something to talk about. So the disease of more. So again, thank you for tuning in to episode 90. I got a question if you want to leave me a comment on the YouTube channel. I'm going to start a Substack with episode 100. I've already actually started it, but I'm going to start putting the show notes there. And as if you know that followed, I've closed the website again because I just didn't feel like spending the money every year for it. Would you be interested? You can leave me a comment down in the section for watch reviews in the Substack. And if so, just give me some ideas of what you would like. I'd like to, tailor my content to you, my audience, because I appreciate you tuning in. Thanks to everyone that supports me. and everyone that's tuned in. And remember, at watchrolling.com, you make the watch. The watch doesn't make you.